The second thing I wanted to cover today was working through Skype, you know. So
okay.
I know that you've got you and Dr. Ernest has a lot of experience with working online with people through Skype or any other communication device. And nowadays there's probably more demand on, you know, towards such means of communication, especially in psychotherapy, you know, doing sessions like that. So I was thinking if you have, from your experience, some kind of guidelines or advices to therapists or people who work with their clients through Skype, through online.
Yes. Well, one of that much more clarity is coming from the American Psychological Association, and that it's important to be able to have certain safeguards and certain programs that you would work with, that Skype isn't necessarily secure and doesn't meet, you know, the stringent requirements. And so there's other platforms that one can use. And I think it differs from country to country, and that certainly a client that you work with, they're understanding that you're working, you know, over the internet, you're working over a media, and so that there's a disclosure of you understand that you're working over this media, and but. So, you know, there's so certain kind of logistics about making sure that the client's privacy is protected. Now, in the way that Ernest and I work is a little different, because people have a tendency, as they're going inside in with these creative processes, that they don't necessarily disclose as one does in a traditional talk therapy, where people are talking deeply about their problems and whatnot. So we don't, for Ernest and I, we don't worry about the confidentiality. We really, you know, we keep everything confidential, but we also know that our clients understand that this is not a foolproof medium to use. And so that it's kind of like the same thing that we experience when we give a demonstration, and maybe there's 1,000 people in the audience, and we say to the client, you know, please say what's appropriate to say in front of a group of people. And so, you know, I encourage people that social media is great, but you have to consider what it is that you're saying. So as long as you have it buttoned down pretty well about the confidentiality issues, and that the platform you're using is respecting that I think that it's really good. People can say whatever they want. What I notice that I enjoy very much working over, you know, in these kinds of sessions, that often people are seeing our face is really large, you know, so it becomes an intimate experience where actually our faces are closer than they would be in real life. Mm-hmm. You know, our faces in our office are, you know, 3 to 6 feet away. And then as I come closer, you know, you can experience something different. So I think that there's clients come to it and they're really not sure, is this going to be effective, because you know they like it so much in person, and most of them say it's really a toss-up of which one I like better. Well, the question for the individual therapist to ask when they're working with someone on these internet platforms, is it actually better for that client? Because for some clients, it's actually better than coming in person. And so it's again that curiosity of what is it that would work better. Now, for people who are not able to leave the house right now, it's the only possibility. And so to have that, and I would say one isn't better than the other, they're different. And that's probably the best way that I would describe it. And we certainly find that with this home, needing to be home, to satisfy the quarantines, that we've been invited to do various sessions, and we had one last week. I call it well baby checks, where Ernie sees his physician every 3 months just to check in. He's not ill. And so we did our first one on Skype, and it was actually marvelous. And the only thing that we missed was the hands-on, and this was with a physician. But we didn't have to get in a car. We didn't have to sit in an office. And it didn't take half a day to go to the doctor and come home. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. So for every person, it's going to be different. And it also depends on the issue. And that there are some issues that people are only going to be comfortable in person.
Mm-hmm. So you said that there are certain kinds of people that it's going to suit them better. Mm-hmm. Does it also count? I mean, is it also true when there is no coronavirus spread or anything like that? I mean, in normal times, can you also think about certain groups of clients that would serve them better?
Well, I think that's the question. I think that it's one of the growth aspects that we're experiencing with all of the changes associated with the restrictions, and to kind of determine, like, well, what is better? What do you like better? And I think an even bigger question to ask is not about the clients. I think the bigger question to ask is about the therapist. If you made me sit and look at a computer screen talking with people all day long, I would go nuts. That yeah. I as a therapist would go out of my mind, and that I couldn't do, like, day after day after day. That's just who I am. I can't be looking at this, a screen like that. I need literally a visual wider horizon than what you can see on the screen. So for me, I couldn't have a full-time practice that was only online. And I think that therapists have to decide this for themselves. The other thing that's going to help decide things for people is, depending on how much money you have after this whole thing lifts, whether people can afford offices. It's a real consideration. Mm-hmm. So I think that chances are, if I needed to do more and more and more on the internet, I would figure out how to attach my super large screen, and so I would have a huge screen that I could kick back and look at, instead of like just a computer, or now I'm looking at an iPad. So I think that there's going to be a lot of flexibility in the future, and I do think that it's going to change medicine and how it's done. I think it's going to change psychotherapy and how it's done, and I also think that there could be some really interesting opportunities for group psychotherapy via Skype or one of the other platforms. And yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunities, and we really don't know. Everything's been shaken up. And as to return to where Ernie started, of the garden and the woman across the street weeding, just taking things out that aren't necessary. And I think we're in the process of doing a lot of weeding in our of how we operate in our lives, and even the physical logistics of being a psychotherapist. I'm fascinated to see the way that this is going to turn out. I have no idea.
Probably a moment of transition, historic event that's gonna probably be then, discussed among others, in the analyzed. Who knows what's gonna happen? I mean, we've never been in such a situation before, so worldwide and generally everywhere on the planet we are now facing that. So,
well, exactly. And my attitude is always, how can we grow from this? Like, what's the best that could come out of it? And I think if we really look that way, and to not use this ridiculous term called normal, it's like we're not returning to normal. We're going to create what's new for us. And hopefully there's going to be incredible innovation.
Place to start a new development from, new growth, right?
Yes. And my fervent hope is that people reconsider what is important to them. So what is important to you for social ethics, for instance? What's important to you for personal ethics? And and to write these things down, to rework these things, and to have it come from within. I think there's a great opportunity. And certainly a lot of the discussions that I'm having with people in, when I'm, out and about. And so still, while respecting the physical distance, you can have conversations with people. And it seems to be, a lot of it is focused around social ethics and personal ethics. And it's really what's important to you in being a member of society, what's important to you, to yourself. And I like the idea that can grow and go forward. So I see a lot of potential for really positive changes. And our evolving economies will eventually settle themselves. We don't know how they're going to settle themselves, but they really got the rug pulled out from underneath them. So the only way that I can look at these things is how can it move towards the positive, and how can we get rid of some of the things that never really did work, and to move forward with it. I guess it's a long way around the internet question, but I think in some ways it does dovetail. As therapists, we do have to decide our social ethics, our ethics with clients, in regards to having remote sessions and what it means, and also personally, what are we consistent with? What are our values? My number one value is kindness, and always has been. But there's many values that guide me. And of all of the times in our lives as therapists, is that we've got to really have a strong focus, a strong inner compass of what guides us. So we have these opportunities now, whereas we didn't have so much time to think about these things before. We were so involved in the outside world. We're uniquely positioned at this particular point in time as psychotherapists to genuinely help people to be better than they were before.
That sounds great. Let's hope people gonna develop. Let's hope people gonna grow from it.
Well, I have faith that they will, and I'm a real champion. I have no idea what that's going to look like, and I'm really comfortable with that, because I think there's going to be some wonderful innovations, and I think that when people finally tune into themselves and they can say, you know what, that was a rough patch, but I'm okay now. I'm not going to be defined by this. I'm going to grow, I'm going to move forward, and I know what's important to me.